coming up.
That's what happens. That's what happens, especially from that tilting point from the horizontal line, from the known into the unknown world. And again, talking a little bit about, and then I will, of course, we're going to end about the Grail quest. This is when you leave the enchanted forest and you realize I've been living in a dream world, in a self-constructed, also a collective constructed dream world. And like that picture with that man and this veil opening up, and you see a kingdom there, is you start to see things from a different perspective there. And you see that, oh, I have been, as it were, prepared for a part of the world, to live in society, to have a place there, to be functional in that society. But that's not everything at all. You know, there's also a place for me. And then the journey starts.
Hello, Synchronauts. How are you? Welcome to this special podcast or program. Because, well, we have been talking with my dear friend and teacher Mike. Welcome, by the way. How are you? I'm so excited.
I'm very fine.
About today's topic that I can't even find the word because we are finally going to talk about a topic that is very dear and near to my heart, which is the hero's journey. And Mike is an expert about the topic because you have been integrating it with your spiritual path and teachings as well. Am I correct?
Very much indeed. Yeah, I will tell about it, of course, during the whole presentation. But yeah, I'm a great fan, so to speak, of Campbell. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about, because we have been lately in our Elysian Roundtable podcast, we have been talking about, well, the different roundtables. We're talking about the mythology of Camelot, a little bit of Kabbalah. But in this case, we're talking about another topic that is related to that, but we have felt compelled to do like a parallel, bunch of programs related to the other topic because, well, let me tell you, for those of you who live in Europe and you can travel to the UK, Mike is going to teach very soon a special workshop related to what we're talking about, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's going to be in Hawkwood College, in a very beautiful area in the Cotswolds in the UK. So you can look it up directly on the website of Hawkwood College, .co.uk, or you can email me or look at my Facebook, and there you will see right away what it is. It's going to be on the 22nd and 23rd of May this year. So, like you said, quite soon.
Yes. And for example, today we are, today is March 27th when we are making this program or recording. So we have a little bit of time building up towards that special event. And to celebrate that you're doing that, we are beginning to talk a little bit about this topic. Obviously, what you will do will be much more in depth, and it will be kind of like an exercise, right? With all of the people who attend. And it will be way more practical, obviously, because right now we're just going to be talking about the different aspects of the hero's journey, but it's not going to be exactly, it's not the same, obviously, being face to face with a teacher and having all the different dynamics also with other people, because it's very special when you have other people join you, right?
Oh, yes, no, definitely. I mean, it's the hero's journey, especially in the context of a course or a workshop, is going to be extremely personal, because everyone will, right from the start, recognize the different themes on the journey. So it's going to be theory and practice with little meditations and exercises, but even in the theory, it will be practical, so to speak, because it's such a lively representation of the inner journey. Yeah,
exactly. And so let's begin with the presentation, because well, we probably will need more than one program, obviously, to be talking about this, because it's such a rich topic to talk about. And we will begin our presentation by honoring the man who brought this information to us, who is Joseph Campbell. And just right before recording, I was telling Mike that yesterday, March 26th, would have been Campbell's birthday. He was born in 1904, so over 100 years ago. And obviously, he still lives through all of his books and his works. He was a very prolific teacher and man. And if you guys like to know more about, or would like to know more about Joseph Campbell, he has a special kind of like a school, or not really a school, but they have this group, official group, that stems from his state. So there are many books that you can find, that you can buy. But also, if you go to YouTube and you look for the hero's journey, and there are many interviews with Bill Moyer. They became available for free recently, just a few months ago. This wasn't really available to the public. And for people like me who live in other countries, sometimes accessing this information is a bit pricey or a bit difficult. So I want to give a shout out to the Campbell Foundation's team for making this information available, because many people were going through crisis right now. The changes that we're undergoing as humanity are demanding for us a new story, to become our own heroes in our own paths, to connect with new archetypes. And the person that we have to thank for this is Joseph Campbell, because during his different studies of different cultures, and he traveled a lot as well, he was in contact with many different types of people in different countries and different cultures. He realized about this so-called monomyth, no? And he realized that these are archetypes, which mean that they are present and vibrant in everybody alive, in every human being. It doesn't matter where we live, what the time is. And so he realized that the hero goes through different phases. It's the same process, as you say, for everybody. Be heroes on, like, I don't know, Harry Potter, or Luke Skywalker, or Frodo Baggins. Like, we see all the same adventures going on with these different characters. Actually, today I am wearing my Wonder Woman t-shirt to honor the topic. She's also a heroine, no? We're talking about heroes and heroines. And so he realized this, and then he gave us this book and these talks and all of this information that you can find online. But the way, Mike, that you work with this, it's like really beautiful. Like, we haven't really talked much in depth, because there's always Kabbalah, no? And there's always so many other things related to the Camelot and the Avalon mythology. But today we're entering, like, okay, now let's go to the heart of it all, which is the hero's journey. So, I'm sorry that I talked about, it's just that I am very excited about Joseph Campbell. Like, I'm a big fan, because of him, Star Wars exists, and people know that I love Star Wars. So
exactly. Yeah.
So we can see how what he discovered and what he taught can be brought into like a mainstream media, no? Or things that seem like fantasy, no, sci-fi, or I don't know, like fantasy stories. But in truth, those principles apply also to humans in our daily lives, no?
Exactly. And what the beauty of Campbell's work is, in relation to the Kabbalah, for example, or in relation to any myth like the Round Table, we've been talking about that a lot, is that being, of course, a great scholar, he is a man of experience. So he understands the myth on it at its essence. And that means that he understands that it's a living, like you said, archetypal concept. And that's different than just understanding it from the intellect as a scholar. And that made it very, and still does, it makes it very practical. And that's where we are going to talk about now with the hero's journey. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you say,
So that's
this can
beautiful.
be like, yeah, and they are these archetypes are very much alive in our living rooms. No, I just remember that quote from there is this movie with Barbara Streisand, and I
Mm,
think Jeff Bridges called "The Mirror Has Two Faces," and she's
mm,
talking about those archetypes. Her sister is getting married,
mm.
and her mother wants all of the attention on her. So she was saying like, we have what archetypes do we have here? No, so the
Yes.
sister
Yeah.
is going to be like the bride, no, the blushing bride, and the mother is going to be like the evil stepmother. And she says, "Who am I?" No, and somebody says like, "Yes, no, like the one, the maiden that never gets married, no, always a
Yeah.
bridesmaid, but the bride." And she says, "These archetypes are alive and living in my living room. No, they are all present
They
there."
do.
So
Well,
this
and
is
that's it. And in every story, I mean, whether it be a movie or a book, or it's even in art and music, our
yeah.
life is full of archetypes, even in daily life. The thing is, most of the time we are oblivious of it, but
Mm-hmm.
we are expressions of the archetypal essences and the powers that are behind it. And that's one of the um, yeah messages of Joseph Campbell. Become aware of this. Um,
Yes.
so, and that's what we're going to look at now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and as he used to quote, "Follow your bliss," no? But first, you
Mm,
before you know what your bliss is, you gotta know who you are and what the processes are that we go through. And if you're not aware
very
of them,
much.
they just pass you
Yeah.
by and you have no idea. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. We just found that
Yeah.
image before the presentation. I was like, "Oh my God, it's a beautiful image." So tell us
It
more
is.
about what's going on here, Mike, please.
Well, first of all, the um, the diagram is basically a circle, and in many mythological, spiritual traditions in the world, the circle is the primal geometrical shape of wholeness and also of the soul.
Mm.
You see that sometimes also in Greek thinking, the circle, very obvious probably when you hear it, or people already know this, it's wholeness, it's completeness, and it's also associated with the soul. So to make the journey over this circle means you are completing the sense, the experience of wholeness, and you are retracing your steps towards the soul. So that's the first simple beginning. But on the journey, on the circle, you are going to encounter all kinds of different things. Um, Secondly, when you look at the circle, you see one horizontal line, and it's not dividing the circle exactly in half, but there is like 1/3, and there you see quite, clearly written known. And what I would add to it is the known world. So your familiar world, your daily world is a part of the circle. So a part is already discovered, is quite known to your experience in your consciousness. And simultaneously, that is where the ego, so the daily awareness, your monetary consciousness, is running the show. So that's the consciousness of all of us that wakes up in the morning and goes about its business and goes to bed at night. Um, but if that's the whole thing, if that's the whole adventure of your life, you're missing out on quite a big part of the rest of your being, the rest of
Yeah.
the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So that little fellow there, that's us, male or female, of course. And if you're not moving out of that known world, you will not discover anything of yourself. So the little puppet there, that's the ego. So if we want to know who the hero is in our lives, it's not something like a higher self. No, we're looking for the higher part within us, the soul or the self. But the true hero is the ego, because it's the ego that has to go on the adventure that most of the time the ego doesn't dare to do, is afraid to do, or we are being, for certain reasons, are being withheld, or we are blocked on our way towards our hero's path. Because, for example, the environment doesn't want us to leave, family or friends, circumstances, the feeling of responsibilities or expectations from others or yourself. There are so many motivations to not go on the adventure. So it takes a hero to go, and to put on your rucksack and your cane, literally or as a metaphor, and to go on your quest.
Yeah.
So that's the very start up there. And well, there are different motives why we would go on our journey.
Yeah.
And at least there are 3 motives, according to Campbell. And the first one is pure spiritual. So as a person, and probably, well, I know you have, of course, but probably all our listeners, otherwise you wouldn't go and listen to a program like this, have an experience of this, where something has happened in your life, like you found a book, you saw a documentary, or you went to a certain lecture, or it came completely and totally from yourself, and it has called you from within to do something, to follow a different path. So that's the spiritual motive there. But we can also be pushed by life to go on the adventure, because we cannot remain in the known world, because the known world has become something unhealthy for us. So that's the, that's, for example, a crisis in our lives. It can be a death. It can be when somebody is going to break up a relationship, a divorce, or can be all kinds of things. And I cannot remain in this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have, and that's probably also recognizable for a lot of us, then you have the combination of the 2 motives. So it can be crisis-like and spiritual at the same time. And you mentioned already, like the Lord of the Rings, when Frodo, I hope all listeners know a little bit about this, but the theme is general and universal. He has to go on a quest. He has to leave the known world, that is the Shire, and somebody is disturbing his peace, which is the wizard Gandalf. He has a quest for him. And some part of him, the ego, doesn't want to go, but there's also a part of him who wants to go, and it seems to be his destiny. It's the same with Harry Potter. It's the same with Han Solo. Actually, Luke Skywalker.
Luke Skywalker. That's what I was just thinking, because it's interesting to see that it could be either spiritual or a crisis comes, or both. So in this case, for example, for at least for Luke Skywalker, he receives a call, like his wizard is obviously Obi-Wan Kenobi. He receives the call, and at first he's just like, no, but what am I gonna do? And then the crisis comes that leaves him no choice. Like, you have to do it.
Exactly.
Either you want it or not, no? And I think that that mirrors what many people who are on a spiritual path, or a path of awakening consciousness, for many of us, that's it. Like, maybe we had the spiritual call before, but what definitely pushes us is a crisis where the world that you know about, it definitely disappears. There's no way going back to that. So you have no choice that other than to respond to the call, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Although there can be, we will see that in a moment, there can be a refusal of the call, or you try to run back to where you came from. But that's possible. You try, exactly. Yeah. And now we took some examples of the modern world, the last few decades, the stories coming from those movies and books. But we have, of course, Odysseus as a hero,
Yes.
or for example, Jason and the Golden Fleece.
Hercules
And
as well.
there are, I'm sorry?
Hercules?
Hercules, very much. Yeah, exactly. And we can go on and on,
Yeah.
but the theme is, of course, the same. And another good example here is, for example, King Arthur.
Of course.
In a certain episode at the very beginning of his life as a youngster, he is still actually the little helper of his half brother Cain. He has to provide, all the materials for him when he's going on a hunt, or he has to joust, he has to fight on horseback and whatever. And then you got the scene in the book and the stories, and sometimes in the films as well, of course, where he has to draw the sword from stone. Here you see a beautiful picture of that. And that made him, from one moment to another, made him to regain a certain memory and consciousness. And the act was quite spontaneous, because he didn't actually know that he was going to be the rightful king. And that's the specific mythological act here. So, and not just for King Arthur. King Arthur is just an archetype within every one of us. So we are all a king in our own rightful life. And of course, the king is an archetype. We've talked about this a lot. So that goes for the women and the men alike. We will we have talked about queens, which is also within me and you as a man and a woman. In this very case, it's about the active movement of doing something, which is the male, the masculine part in us. Now, if you look at this picture, the stone is trapping the sword.
Yes.
And the sword is the symbol of sovereignty and autonomy, taking back your own authentic life. But something is keeping it there. And the stone, if you want to know what is keeping your sword, that's the content of all your unconscious motives not to go on the quest.
So I'm gonna go back to the image. Do you want to use this one, or you want to use this one? You tell me.
Oh, it doesn't matter too much. Yeah.
Okay, so just
Let's
to
go
have
to
a
this
different
one.
one. Yeah. So this is interesting, because then the stone would represent this lower part.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Wow.
And in it is are all kinds of hidden problems, and but also treasures. But a lot of what you find there is unrecognized. So it can be fears, can be grief, it can be the voices of other people, like a father or a mother, or other people who will prevent you from living your own life. And as soon as you have uncovered what your stone is, and then we will be able to draw the sword from it. And with that intention, and that's up there where we see the sword and the helmet, that is where the journey begins. But we have to do that, perform that initial act of saying, this is the moment that I'm going.
So you receive the call to adventure, and then, as this knight over here, you get on your horse and you say, okay, let's go. We're going to do it.
Yes, exactly.
We're going to go looking. Well, it could be, for example, because one thing would be like, okay, draw the sword from the stone, or go on your quest for
Yeah.
your own grail, or many other
Mm.
archetypal stories like this, right?
Indeed. I mean, probably I don't have to explain this, but of course, it's not about physically drawing a sword from a stone, which is quite difficult for a lot of us to do anyway. But it's an action on the inside, it's a psychological action there. Um, but if we do it rightly, it has immediate outward consequences. So
Right.
I've seen a lot of people doing that. For example, somebody who always lived somebody else's life
Mm,
and feeling extremely miserable about it
yeah.
because something was calling inside and
Hmm.
saying, I need to do this because that's what I want, but I cannot because, well, otherwise I feel guilty or, my duty is, etc., etc. Um,
Mm,
so the act is to be determined to say, no, I'm going now to take back my autonomy, my sovereignty,
mhm.
and I'm going to follow this now, going to follow it through. And it can be a very concrete decision to say, I'm going to change my job, or I'm going to leave this religion, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Mhm.
Like people leaving the church or a synagogue or whatever, or the other way around, and saying, now I'm going to do um, what is really calling me instead
Mhm.
of other people saying what is good for me.
Mhm. That makes a lot
So
of
that's
sense. I just wanted to ask you,
yeah.
in your workshop, you have a special activity where you do this symbolically with the attendees, right?
Well, yes, last year I did a Kabbalah course about a round table, and we went outside, and I had a physical sword, which was actually stuck in a trunk instead of a stone.
Mm.
Um, and we physically, with a little ritual there, a little meditation, we we actually drew the sword from stone and holding it up and saying to yourself what it is you need to do to proceed on your quest. And some people already have done this in their lives, but there are always new moments that we need to say again, I need to draw the sword from stone.
Yes, and according to Campbell and other scholars, they say that doing a ritual is very important because then you bring from your subconscious to the conscious the act itself, and then it has
Yeah,
meaning and it becomes real, and then you like manifest it,
exactly.
and then things
Yeah.
start moving around, no?
Well, Campbell said, I think it's a wonderful description. He said, a ritual is the enactment of a myth. So
Yeah, that's it.
uh, yeah, you bring it into action, the whole symbology and everything. And that's why it's not just theory, it has to do with the living experience and expression of the human life of today. And here we see it, for example. Yeah. Um, Now, the whole dynamic thing behind this is it's not just the one uh, in a lifetime act, like I just said. So it may be that today I draw the sword out of my stone and say, I'm going to do this. And for a day or two or a week or a month, it goes well. And then all of a sudden, I notice one day that my sword is back in the stone. Or, I'm off my track or I'm doubting.
We get
And this is
distracted. Yeah.
of distracted, exactly. And this is quite normal, of course. It's very human. And then we have to do it again. We have to draw that sword again, say, no, this is what I need to do. And you draw the sword from stone again. Yes.
Exactly. Actually,
Mm,
Dr. Joe Dispenza says about that, and he uses like meditation is a good exercise to do that, to tame the mind. No, so you have to tame your mind and your unconscious, or like the running program, as he says. No, because we all go on
mm,
a running program. So it's like taming a horse. So that's why sometimes you just look around and then you're like, why is the sword back in the stone? No? Because you get distracted.
Very much.
The program takes over. So
yeah,
there is much work to do in terms of the emotions, of the psychology, but also the subconscious mind. And you have to work with the archetypes and do meditations to access that part of your brain that is boycotting you. But also the biggest problem for many people in practical real life, and I know that from experience, is that this stone, which is your family or your environment, especially for example for women, it's quite a challenge because we are breaking boundaries, we're changing things, no? But sometimes the environment, at least in Latin America, I'm going to talk about my experience, obviously. No, I'm not going to say that this is everywhere the same for every woman.
No.
It's in Latin America. There's a very toxic, masculine, macho culture that is a very heavy stone for us as women because we are even in danger. Like our lives are in danger when you try to get the sword out of that stone. And so there are some people or women in this case, because I'm talking about women, that are even willing to risk their lives so as to gain their sovereignty. So this is a very, very important thing to bear in mind. Like sometimes drawing the sword might mean I'm just gonna make some changes in my life. And yes, maybe I'm gonna distance myself from my family or from the toxic culture that a woman should stay home and just cook and you're not meant to have a life of your own or study or whatever. And sometimes
exactly.
in some places it could be safe to draw the sword, in others it won't. But nonetheless, when the spirit is calling, and this is when we move from like people like you and me, more like me because you're a great teacher, no, and you're achieving so much. But people who are more like in the 3D world, we have challenges. But those people, and then come the new heroes, no. For example, I think right now of Malala, no. She's a hero. She drew the sword and she put her life in danger in order to go for her calling. And the stone was very, very, very heavy for her. And she even had to move because she was threatened, no? And so there are many
Very
modern
much.
heroes that can teach you
Examples.
the variety, exactly, the variety of experiences that we can have working with the hero's journey. And sometimes it's going to be something that you might say, oh, it's not going to make a big difference to the world. But in other cases, maybe to the world, but yes, to your world. And it's going to take discipline and it's going to take changing your mind or even losing your mind sometimes.
And courage.
So I think it's important to mention this. What do you think?
No, very much. And like you said, every culture has its specific challenges there. And that's not just the culture of, a certain country, but also the culture of your own family. That's the subculture. And or your religion for that matter. And it all comes with challenges. And it's good to begin in that sense small with your own known environment. So like you said, rightly, don't try to change the world if you can't even change your own. So start with the sword and the stone that is personal. And which is, which is close to home and you can handle. Otherwise, it will be maybe an enterprise which will fail from the start. So we have to stay in our own quest. Yeah, exactly. And the quest will develop. So again, we start initially from a certain act and the call to adventure. And the next step will be that, and I'm sure a lot of people testify of this, is that you find supernatural aid. I just said something about, here's a nice picture. Well, I talked about Gandalf. He is always present. So he's like the inner teacher of Frodo, so to speak. And of course, we have the same in Star Wars.
Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Or
exactly.
Yoda. Yes.
Yeah.
And or Merlin.
Well, there's the exactly. And that's the challenge for the hero, the ego, who's going on its way to know you're not alone. And although physically people may not travel with you, but be very attentive and be sometimes very still to listen. It's a very important quality on the journey, to listen to what's being said on the inside. So supernatural aid,
like
most of the time.
An inner guide? That's what you mean?
Inner guide, exactly. But of course, it can also be that at the moment you change something in your life by drawing the sword from stone, certain circumstances open up as well, not only on the inside, but also on the outside. And you meet that teacher physically, or you find that book, and a kind of circumstances come together. This picture, you see like a veil opens up, and you get a glimpse of where you need to go. Like this little fairy lady. Well, you can, of course, interpret this picture in many different ways, but yeah, there's a supernatural influence that guides us, physically around us and or interiorly. So that's most of the time the magical phase at the beginning of the story. And I had a lot of people who say, and including myself, who said, I will never forget that time at the very beginning of my quest, because it was magical. There was something like supernatural about it. I was being helped, and yeah, I knew that somebody was with me all the time. And you meet the right people, the right time, and that's beautiful. Yeah. But you wouldn't have met it or encountered it if you didn't
answer the call,
drew that sword from stone, and you started doing it. Yeah. So that's the theme of the supernatural aid. It's an encouragement there to go. Because of course there are a lot of apprehensions on the road ahead. You have no clue where you're going.
Yeah.
And then comes the next initiation quite soon. So there's like a threshold guardian sometimes. This is also something you see in a lot of stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going back here because so it would be kind of like this, no? The threshold of adventure. So we're here. So what?
Yeah, we're there.
Guardians, or can you tell us more a bit about it?
Yeah, of course. Well, this is in many stories sometimes a person, but it can also be a creature of some kind. A beautiful story is actually about the Buddha. And at the beginning, and of course there were many Buddhas. One of them was trained as a fighter. Strangely enough, maybe for some of us, but he was trained also as a warrior. And then one day he encounters a monster, and the monster is the threshold guardian of a certain place. So the Buddha says, move aside, and the monster says no. And the monster is extremely hairy, well, hair everywhere, very long, and the monster is called Sticky Hair. So the Buddha says, if you don't, I will remove you. And the monster only laughs. And then the Buddha has a javelin. He throws it at the monster, and it just got stuck in his hair. And the monster laughs. And he uses a club, and no use. He uses a sword, and then he uses a fist. He uses a foot, and it gets all stuck in the hair of the monster. And eventually, the Buddha is trapped with both hands and feet and completely entangled and imprisoned in the hair of the monster. And then the monster says to the Buddha, ha, Now you are probably very afraid, aren't you? And the Buddha says, no, I'm not, because who I am is actually the ground of being that you are made of. And it will blow you to smithereens, if you go any further. And then the monster lets him go. And he becomes the threshold guardian of the Buddha temple itself. Now, this little story is again a metaphor that we will meet or encounter threshold guardians. It means somewhere on the way, you will meet someone who is guarding a place. You need to go over it. This may be something within you, but most of the time, an outward external person represents that that threshold guardian. So it may be your employee, it may be your father, your mother, a brother, a sister, but somebody who is challenging you. And it's a test. So most of the time, from the normal ego perspective, we say, well, I'm always in a fight or a quarrel with this person. But from this new spiritual perspective, you may interpret it differently, saying, what does it really teach me, this person? I need to fix this riddle. And that's also in a lot of mythological themes, the riddle. I need to get past this by solving the problem or the puzzle that this person is presenting to me. Does that make sense? Do you have any of these experiences?
Yes, no, I am
Okay.
mind blown because for the one I had never heard about this way. So I'm just thinking about and not only the people in my life who are my threshold guardians, but also I am their threshold guardian as well. We're like little mirrors.
Yes.
It makes me laugh a bit, no? Because I think it's important to say, don't think that you're all innocent and perfect and you're the only hero on their quest. Like your family is also on the quest. Your partner, your children, nature itself, everything is on their own quest, no? So I think that's really, really interesting. But I was just remembering also one of my most favorite movies when I was a child, which is The Neverending Story.
Yeah.
And the same happens with
Good.
Atreyu. Like he's in front of the Sphinx, the first one. I would say that is his first threshold when he's like, and they have a riddle for him. That's what the Sphinx represents. So I'm just like, oh my God, that is true as well. Like, and also remember another one of my favorites, which is the Dark Crystal. The same happens with what's his name? I forgot the name of the main character, the Gelfling. Jen, I think his name. So for Jen, it's the same. Like they give him like, okay, here's the crystal, you have to figure out what to do with it, And
Very
for I
much.
think that the threshold guardian would be what is her name also? I forgot. I'm so excited about
it. Doesn't matter. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm forgetting the names of the characters, but like this little witch that he arrives to her, that's the threshold guardian for him. So I'm just thinking about so many other stories, but also like thinking about my very own story, and it's really mind-boggling to see how this applies to fantastic stories that they're only imagined, no, but also to a real life. So I'm just, this is amazing. This is so interesting.
Yeah. And it can also be, a good friend who has a certain trait that you may not like or is challenging to you. And you can say, oh yeah, what do I need to learn from this? Because when you transform it through yourself, that conflict or the problem, you actually go over a threshold, beginning of transformation. So there again, the stories are many and the application is in your own life. So start wondering about, why do I find with this person always the same problem? And instead of seeing it as a problem, you see it as a mythological challenge there, psychological challenge. And then again, a new world starts to open up.
Definitely.
And
Yeah.
that's and there are many of these moments in your life if you pursue on the quest, of course, that is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you may at that border actually from going into the known into the unknown world. That's a threshold. It's like you're standing in front of a door, and in the room you're standing, it's light, but on the other side, it's dark. So you
Yes.
don't know where you're going because you haven't explored that place. So that's the metaphor. Now,
Yeah.
in parallel to this is again the story, the myth of the Round Table, and
Okay.
we just saw the Sword from Stone, and we also have this moment when King Arthur has formed together with Queen Guinevere the Round Table Fellowship or companionship. Here you see them in the Great Hall of Camelot, and at the beginning they are a bit confused. Okay, we have established this kingdom, well, what to do? The concept is very nice, but they still have to explore this new life of theirs, and that's the threshold beginning. And then all of a sudden, the myth tells us about this light hovering around or just above the Round Table. And that light that comes slowly down, lowering itself, and then transforms into this golden chalice, this grail. And they are all in awe, in complete amazement what they see. This is something of a divine order.
Yeah.
And like the disciples of Christ, they are all, um, well, it's transmitting something to them.
Yeah.
So when the grail vanishes again, they say, okay, this is what we need to go in pursuit of.
Mm.
And then Gawain, one of the knights of the Round Table, said, yes, but we shouldn't go all together. We should go on an individual quest
Yeah.
and go into the forest where it is most dark and there is no path. And that's particular for uh, the Western mythology and the Western way.
Mm-hmm.
That's good to emphasize because it's about the individual path
Mm-hmm.
and and going, like I just said, past that door where you don't know what's on the other side. Or again, the other metaphor for this is the dark forest, and there's no path. You have to find or make your own path.
Yeah.
Find your own adventures. Otherwise, if you don't, you will be traversing a path somebody else already went. And you're
And it's not
living
yours.
somebody else's adventure. Yeah, go
Exactly.
ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
it. That it's somebody else. You're living somebody else's life instead of your own because
Yeah.
you're trying to follow. And this is really interesting because I was watching yesterday a video. It jumped up on my Facebook, and they were
Mm-hmm.
talking. This person was saying like, "Why do you want to follow the advice of all these influencers and people? That's their life. That's not
Yeah.
your life. That doesn't mean that's gonna work for you. You have to find your own path, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to find your own." um, idea of what success would be for you and work towards that instead of trying to
Mm-hmm.
replicate what others are doing because that's not going to work for you because you're a different person. So it's interesting
Well,
to
it
note,
is.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, that right now, the state of the world being what it is, we don't really have actual heroes. So
Mm-hmm.
influencers and artists or famous people are taking those places with very
Yeah.
wrong archetypes, and so we're just running around like headless chickens. No, the blind
Mm-hmm.
following the blind, because there is no substance. There is only
Yeah.
like reflections. We're in the hall of
Mm-hmm.
mirrors, and
Yes.
nothing is authentic. So
Mm.
the thing is, how are you going to find your authenticity if
Yeah.
not by treading your own path?
Exactly true. And there are two other important points which I
Hmm.
can distill from what you're just saying. Um, and I completely agree with you say. And the first thing is that if you teach this kind of material like Campbell did, you're not teaching the personal examples. You're teaching the ideas and principles behind it. Like in Kabbalah, I teach the tree of life, but I give hardly any personal examples because it's not about my life, it's about the teaching. It's never about the teacher. That's a problematic development sometimes in also the spiritual world, is where the teacher finds himself or herself more important and the center of attention, but it should be the teaching. That's first of all, that's very important indeed. Yes. And secondly, whether we talk about Kabbalah or the round table, the hero's journey, what we're trying to do is to change or transform things within us in our lives through archetypal, deep unconscious means. And any other instruction leading to trying to think positive, which is nice, but it cannot transform anything.
No.
Because the what we call the prefrontal cortex there is a good device in daily life, but it's not made for transformation.
No.
It will not do the trick.
No, you have to access other parts of your brain. And that's why I was talking about meditation earlier, or having these rituals that you also provide, these exercises in your books, like Synchronauts. If you haven't read Mike's books, like please make yourself a favor and check them out, because you have really good concrete exercises that help to activate the right parts of your brain and your body, even because this intelligence is all over our bodies, to start like unblocking, no, or moving along in this experience.
Exactly, it is, yeah. And well, and this is an exercise in itself. This momentum here at the round table. So again, like the sword and stone, you don't have to sit at the table and visualize a grail, although you can. But in daily life, it means that you have to find what your grail is. And Campbell would say, what is your bliss at this very moment? What is the Pegasus or the height of your feeling of fulfillment? And it can be anything. And that's also a part of the hero's quest. Don't think that you're stupid or be ashamed of what you really want or what it is that gives you fulfillment. And it can be anything. It doesn't need to be a profession, but it can be. You know, and follow that.
It could be like the simpler thing, like, okay, I'm an accountant and I love doing my job and I want to be the best accountant in the world, no? Or I want to be the best, I don't know, like even simple things like I want to be the best people to ever bake a pie, no? Or whatever, things that seem so mundane. Sometimes that's where fulfillment comes for certain people. Not everybody needs to fulfill a huge spiritual story, no? Or a big, you don't need to be a Jesus or a Buddha. You just need to be.
Yeah. Well, I have a beautiful example actually from where I live here in Holland. Here in the city, we have a man and he lives on the street, but he chooses to live there. And he writes poetry. And then he asks people like, shall I read you a poem? And they give him something. And I talked to him a few occasions. Actually, even yesterday, I met him in the city. And he says, I'm the happiest person alive.
Wow.
And that's his conscious choice to do this. And that's his grail, at least for the moment. Yeah. So he is living his bliss.
Wow.
And so it doesn't mean you have to be successful with a lot of money or social status. The Grail quest doesn't have anything to do with that or the hero's path. It's just following your authentic, essential self. That's what it is about.
I think you've hit the point, no? You've hit the nail right where it should be, because for many people, at least that has been my experience, since we're very, very, very young children, we are indoctrinated to, oh, And you mentioned that in one of your books. I can't remember which one it is, but you mentioned that, no? Like, okay,
yeah,
you should study a career, and you should get married and have children, and they give you like the
yeah,
list, no? Like the picket fence and the dog and the house but then life comes by, a part of you is rebelling against that. No, like, no, this is
yeah,
not for me. But you still want to please your family, or you want to please society.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
time passes by and you realize, like, in the standards of society, I'm a loser, no? Which is my case. Like, I am the
yeah,
most biggest of the losers. But at the same time, I think, what would be the point of me having all of the list if I would be completely unhappy, which can lead to illnesses, which can lead to, it's just like we're just wearing masks, no? To try to fit
very
in.
much.
But in the
And
end,
that's, yeah.
no? Yes, no, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add to what you're saying is indeed, and that's where we go back to the stone again, because in there you have all those unconscious conditionings to do with our personal life
Yeah.
and our tribal environment, as we sometimes call it, and it has an enormous gravity, an enormous impact on our lives itself, um, and it can
Definitely.
prevent us a whole life,
Mm-hmm.
from start to finish, to go on
Yeah.
our authentic quest. Yeah, exactly.
I'm just gonna move a little bit because I wanna just a closing, because for today, sadly, we have to stop in a few
Oh
minutes.
yeah,
But
it's going very
just
quickly.
talking about
Yeah,
yeah, I know this is so interesting. Like, I'm like a child in a candy store right now. No, but coming back
I know
to
how it feels.
what I was sharing, because it happened, it's been happening to me. I'm in that process. No, I'm 40 something years old. I'm not gonna say exactly how many, but 40 something years old. So, I'm at a point in my life where I just came to the realization that I was indoctrinated. That's not what I want. That's never what I wanted. And now,
Mhm.
but when you go through this, because that's part of the journey, the hero's journey, and that is why so many people have life crisis and all of these things when they have achieved what they thought when they're 40s, in their 40s, in their 50s, and then they say, this is not enough, this is not fulfilling me. Like, I can have the car, I can have the partner, I can have or even, no, I go look for drugs or excitement or whatever, no,
Yeah,
or gambling, I don't know, and it's not enough, and it will never be enough, because it's never going to
yeah,
fulfill your true soul's desire and your true soul's purpose. So this crisis come, and the
exactly.
hardest part is, and I would like to talk more about this in our next recording, like, when
Mm.
we arrive to the realization that you can do things differently, but everything crumbles down. Now, everything that you thought was real, everything that you thought you were meant to be or to do, it crumbles down, and then you're like, okay, now what
Yeah,
do I do? So it's part
yeah.
of the
Well,
hero's
that's what happens.
journey. Huh?
That's what
Yeah.
happens, especially from that tilting point from the horizontal line from the known into the unknown world.
Mhm.
Um, and again, um, talking a little bit about, and then I will, of course, we're going to end about the Grail quest. This is when
Mhm.
you leave the enchanted forest
Yeah.
and you realize I've been living in a dream world, in a self-constructed, also a
Yeah.
collective constructed dream world. And
Yeah.
like that picture with that man and this veil opening up, and you see a kingdom there, is
Yeah.
you start to see things from a different perspective there, and you
Mm.
see that, oh, I have been, as it were, prepared for a part of the world, to live in society, to have a place there, to be functional in that society. But that's
Yeah.
not everything at all. There's
No.
also a place for me. And then the journey starts. Exactly.
Yes. Yes, because this
Mm.
this happens, and when this happens, you have to be strong enough to keep on moving and don't
Yes.
despair. And it's a process, because figuring out who you
Yeah.
really are out of this environment, no, out of the known, coming back to this part, no, out of the known and
Yeah.
into the unknown. eh, it,
Yeah.
it 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 takes courage, but it also takes, like, enough love for yourself to say, I'm gonna love myself enough to do this, even though it's scary, even though I have no idea what's going on, and you're in crisis and you're in pain, and it's horrible, but something else will come out of it. So if anybody is listening to us right now that's going through such an experience right now, which I'm going through one, and we've already talked about this as well, not on the program, but personally. No, this is like the Matrix also, no? It's like living the Matrix. But I was telling you a couple of weeks ago, I think, or some days ago, like, but you know what's horrible? Like, you live one Matrix, but then there's another one. It's like this, the Russian dolls, no? You like have one and another, and this is an ongoing process, no? Because I think that
it is
what the hero's journey is giving us as a possibility is leave all of these masks behind, or leave all of these preconceived ideas of what we should be, to strip down naked to our reality, which is we are one with the Creator. We are divine beings. We are spirits living a human experience, and we have to remember our bigger origins and our bigger essence that has been forgotten when we come
very
all the
much.
way down to Asia, no? Talking in terms of Kabbalah.
Yes, and at the same time, the circle is not complete without the known world. So we will see in the end, another moment, we have to return to where we came from, and the structure and the person we are in the known world and our own environment, family, friends, work, etc., is still important and still a part of the wholeness. So how to integrate what we have found on our quest, on our journey as a hero, and how to bring it back to here, that's another challenge there. We will talk about it another moment. But yeah, and then nothing is without importance. Nothing is without meaning on the quest itself.
Yeah, and just as Jesus would say, no, be in this world but not be of it. No, so that's the challenge, and that's what the hero's journey gives us. Like, you're gonna leave that dream spell, as we call it in the galactic Maya, no? You're gonna leave this consensus that is invented or that's made up, that is very arbitrary, and move on to, and where you will find the answers is actually in the unknown. And I'm remembering, actually, there is this song from the second Frozen movie, and Elsa is being called again to the adventure. And she said, like, don't, no, like, I already have my family, I have everything, don't call me into the unknown. I don't want to go, but she ends up going anyway. I love that song. When I'm thinking about the hero's journey, I listen to that song.
That's exactly the same.
Like, that's where the treasures are, in the unknown. Like, it's scary and I don't want to go, but if I want to go get the treasure, I have to move from the known into the unknown, definitely.
Exactly. You have to go into that cave or into the deep ocean or whatever, but you have to go there if you really want to find it. Exactly. And again, that's the whole what mythology in general has to tell us, whether it be dragons or other kinds of monsters or queens or princes. That's what they represent. Exactly.
Very good. So we will continue with this conversation very soon. I don't know when. We haven't even talked about when we're going to do the next recording. But I don't know if there's something else you would like to say, Mike. Just a quick reminder of how people can reach you, and if there's something else you would like to say.
Thank you. Yes, of course. Well, Facebook under my own name, or Circle of Avalon, and there you will find the course, the 2-day course in Hawkwood College. Or you can look at my website, which is www.circleofavalon.nl. And otherwise, just send me an email, which you can also find on my Facebook. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to ask me. And on the website of Hawkwood College, there you can find the course as well. And if you decide to come, you're very welcome. It's going to be a wonderful event, I think, again. And you have to subscribe with Hawkwood. So I can provide you with the information, but subscription is through Hawkwood College itself. Yeah,
so if you guys can go, I live on the other side of the world. I live in a different continent and it's a bit tricky for me to get there. But if you guys can go, please go, because what Mike is teaching us, it's life transforming and it's information that heals. So I want to thank you so much, dear Mike. Thank you, Synchronauts. And we'll see each
Thank
other
you
very,
again.
I don't know where, but this is to be continued.
We will be back.
Yeah, we will be
Yeah.
back. Definitely we'll be back.
Yeah.
Thank you. So talk to you soon.
Thank
See
you
you,
too.
Synchronauts.
Bye bye.